Hey guys, in this tutorial we are going to go through how to deploy your APIs and front-end apps that you've built previously. I'm going to assume that you went already through all the previous tutorials, how to do HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, Next.js, create an Express or Node.js server using the MongoDB database and so on. And presumably the basically final project, which is building a full stack blog app, both the API and the dashboard in React and the other front-end app in Next.js. So having in mind that you already, for example, have this entire blog full stack project done, you can only use it locally because you've built it and you can only use it locally on localhost 5000 for the API, localhost port 3000 for these front-end apps, and so on. So technically, only you can see them. But in order to deploy them online for other people to use them, you need to know how to do it. So technically, this course or tutorial is basically about that part. So I'm gonna try to be as brief as possible to explain you how it all works. And how you can easily do it for free. So a few terms around deploying stuff. Deploying just means putting it out there online for others to use it. So there's a term, continuous integration, which means it's basically a process between development and deployment. As I said, I'll link this file below, so you can also read it. And this is basically in the textual format, the same thing I'm going to explain now visually in the video format. So basically some quick terms. Environment is what we mention as describe as like an instance of our app being deployed online to be used by very specific group of people, which you are going to very quickly understand in context. So in reality, as I said here in GitHub, for our repositories, we usually have, so by the way, I created like separate repositories, basically our blog project. I just put it in separate repositories, our API and then our React app dashboard as well. Because in our learning repository, they're all in one big folder, which is something you never do in reality. The API is its own repository, dashboard React is its own repository, individual one, independent one, and so on. So basically what we in reality do is we have two branches, the master branch, and then we create a dev branch. So those are two separate versions of the entire code base. In the dev branch, which is the default one we use in reality, we only push there the code. The way you push code now to GitHub, you would actually push that code to the dev branch, never to the master branch. So the master branch would have a copy of the data of the entire code base, which is only rarely pushed at. We actively push to the dev branch, and that's a development branch, meaning we only push the active development code. And the master branch is used for production. So the difference is, so both the dev branch and master branch, we will deploy an instance of an app for the development branch, and another instance of the app for the master branch, and that's going to be a production version of the app. They will be two different URLs, one URL for the development environment and a separate URL for a production environment. So the development environment is used by developers. That's what we actively push new development updates and test them by hand and so on. And only once we are very sure and tested it properly that it all works, only then we combine everything we have in a dev branch and push it into the master branch. And then we deploy that in a production environment, meaning the URL that our clients or users actually use daily, right? So there's a version of the app that only is for us developers to test our active development code, and a separate version of the app only being deployed only from the master branch, which is bug-free. There's no bugs. It's working as it's intended, and it's used by our end clients and users. So basically, those two terms we are going to use development environment and production environment, right? So now, the problem we have is, for example, let's say we set up automatic deployment. So anytime we push some code to the master branch, it gets deployed to our production environment. Let's imagine it like that. So let's say you have like a very important app that bunch of paying clients are using. And imagine you at like Friday night, you drink some beers, you push some code updates, and it turns out that you push some buggy code, something that crashes the app. And let's say that as soon as you pushed it to the master branch, it got automatically deployed to production and it crashed for all your clients that entire day or for like 3-4 hours. And in that span of time, imagine you lost like few €1,000 of paying customers just because it crashed because of your simple mistake. So that's why there's a flow in place to prevent these sort of things from happening. And it's basically the continuous integration term, which is basically we set up automatic testing. So anytime you push you know how we create tests in our API to test every API endpoint that we make, just to make sure it all works perfectly or as intended. So basically, there's a tool called Circle CI, and there are similar tools that do the same job, but this is one of the best ones. We can connect it to our GitHub repository. And what it does is anytime we push some code updates, it will automatically run tests. And if all tests pass, only then it considers it deployable, like you can deploy it automatically or manually. If the tests fail, it will never deploy automatically. So this is very important. So even if you push some code that will crash tests, and tests should catch any of those potential issues that could crash an app or something like that. That's why the API tests are very important. So that's the solution. Basically, we use this one tool, connect it to our GitHub repository. Automatically, it will run tests every time we push some code, and that's basically it. So all of this text, everything we explained so far, is just that simple concept. So basically, what you do is you can go to the circleci.com. You can sign up. I already am signed up, so you click go to the app, and then you can log in with the GitHub or sign up with your GitHub account. And as soon as you do that, you'll see all your projects basically listed. So what you're going to do is find your repository where your API is, and you're going to click setup project. And now it's going to do some stuff. By the way, in order for this app to run, you need to use in your GitHub repository to add a folder, which is dot, and it's you can find it here, an example. So the folder is .circleci, and then inside there's a config.yaml file, and inside there's some code. You don't need to understand much here. Basically what it does, it says use this Node.js version, download the GitHub repository every time somebody pushes, then run the build, and then run the tests. Basically, that's what it says. So this is a config file this app uses. So you need to include this folder inside of your GitHub repository. So here is my blog API, and here is the folder. So I included it. So include it, push it to this repository, and then go and set up this project. And basically, I'm gonna say I already have this set up, or it cannot find it for some reason. So yeah, second. Okay, doesn't matter. So if you have an existing config like that, just click this button, use existing config, and and then click start building. So as soon as, and they will, this service will find this folder in your repository, and this, by clicking this button, everything will get set up. So basically, from this point on, one more thing is in project settings. You saw what I clicked. So you can go to environment variables, and you can here add bunch of key values, environment variables like db, mongo, and then underscore URI, however you call it. So your URL to your actual MongoDB that this API is using. So any of those private environment variables, you can add them here. And basically, you just set up everything. And from this point on, anytime you push some code updates, it will run the tests and make sure that only if they pass, you can automatically deploy your project online. So that's one part of the job. And then the second part of the job, let me go back here. It's basically deploying the apps themselves. So to deploy the app, by the way, I'll here list all the basically steps as well. You can read them here, how to sign up for Circle CI, include this folder, circle.circle.ci, and then set up your project. And then, so now for the deployment, you can use Heroku.com, which is basically a service that where you can set up multiple apps that will basically deploy either your API server or React app, Next.js app, and so on. So as soon as you sign up for this service, you can create multiple teams. Front end, I made like two teams, like front end team and a back end team. In the back end team, I'll deploy all my back end apps, like APIs, all sorts of APIs I make. And then in the front end, all front end apps like React dashboard or Next.js app and so on. So those all apps have to be encapsulated around teams. And for each team, to create a team, you have to include a credit card, but it will not get charged if you use the free option that I'm going to show you. As soon as you do that, you can go to the backend, and now the backend team or whichever. So now what you need to do is create a new pipeline. So what the pipeline is, it's basically what I mentioned initially. You have development environment and a production environment. So the pipeline is just one space where you can deploy an instance of the app that's connected to the dev branch. So it's going to be deployed for the development environment. And then another app under the same pipeline, which is for production. It's connected to the master branch, and it's going to manually deploy every time you manually click deploy, and it will deploy from the master branch, and that's going to be our production version of the app. So basically, this pipeline is encapsulating a single project and multiple instances of the app for the same project, just for different end users. So here you can search your API, search your repository that you can connect this pipeline to, and you just click, I find it, here is my repository, just click connect, give it a name, and then create the pipeline. I already created the pipeline, so I'm not going to create it again. So once you create the pipeline, now, just for an example, we would create an app, one app for development, and it's connected to the dev branch, and it's automatically deploying from the dev branch, and another app that's deploying for production just from our master branch. So now you can basically click add an app, and you would, for this example, we will create an app basically only for production. You would enter the app name, choose Europe if you need Europe, and click create app. And as soon as you do that, in this column, it says production column. So here is where you can create it. Once you create the app, now what you need to do is basically go to settings and then reveal config vars. And there you can add again all those private environment variables that you need, like DB, Mongo, URI, URL to your actual MongoDB, those private vars that nobody should have access to. And then here, you can just click add build pack, choose Node.js, and click save changes. Basically, we are saying that this is a Node.js app, so that's why you need to choose the build pack to deploy this app. Then once you do those two things, essentially you can go to the deploy tab. And now, because if it was a development environment, and this is a development version of the app, here we would select a dev branch, and then we would click enable automatic deploys, meaning every time we push to the dev branch some new code, it will automatically trigger the automated tests first in a Circle CI, and if the tests pass, then the app will get automatically deployed to the dev environment, and this is very important. Now, because this is a production version of the app, and it's only being deployed from the master branch, where we only push code once we are very sure that the code works in a dev branch, only then we move it to the master branch so we can deploy it to production. Then I never set up automatic deploys, just in case something crazy doesn't happen. I have to manually click deploy branch every time I want to deploy something to prod, and I choose deploy code from the master branch, and this is the key. So now once I do that, basically the code will get deployed. Now, one important caveat is that if you start your server with a custom package.json command, in our case, it's basically start then colon server. So you need to type yarn and then start server in order to run our API. the Heroku by default will use npm start command, so to start your server, but our npm start command starts a server in a development mode. So it's not, we have a custom command to start our server in a production mode. So if that's the case, by default it will use npm start to run the server. But if that's the case, you need to include this proc file web : and then type your actual custom command that will run your server. Once you do that and include that in your repository, and then you click here deploy branch to deploy your app. Your app, you'll see here, basically I can click it and then you'll see here a process of your app being built. So basically what Heroku does is they download the code from your master branch, they run yarn install like you would do locally for yourself to install all the dependencies, and then basically it runs a yarn build to make a build of your app, and your build will be stored in a build folder, and then at the end it just runs yarn this custom command yarn dev yarn start server to actually run our server, and that's it. And it said, and it gives us like a custom URL saying that our server was deployed here to this custom URL, and everybody now can use that URL to connect or use our API. So one of the important things is that Dino is basically, the Dino is, this is what Heroku uses to deploy our app. Doesn't matter, don't mind the term. So it's basically, you need to uncheck this if it's already checked to make sure that it's not a paid version of the app. So if you're using the free version of the app, which I'm using here now, you have to make sure that you go to the resources and then edit this and then uncheck this. It says $0. So if you're using the free version, your server basically will sleep until somebody sends a first request. And once somebody sends a first request, the server will wake up. That will take maybe 7 to 10 seconds. So that first request will take some time. And then every subsequent request will be very fast. And then if nobody uses your API for like 15, 20 minutes, I'm not sure exactly how long, then it goes back to sleep again. So it's kind of annoying that first request is going to be very slow until it keeps waking up and so on. If you have a paid version, however, then your server will constantly be awake and everybody can make requests and it will respond pretty fast, pretty quickly. So basically that's pretty much it. The same thing the same way you can deploy sorry, give me a second. So the same way you can deploy the front-end apps as well. Essentially what I've done is, how front-end apps work is basically I created a server, a Node.js server. The only thing it does, it basically returns index.html on every GET request that people make. And basically that's pretty much it. So once you connect this React app to create an app in Heroku for this React app, it will download. Every time it needs to deploy this React app, it will download our repository, run yarn install to install all dependencies. Basically, it will run the yarn build to build our React app. And then once our React app is built, it will be stored in a build folder where there's going to be an index.html file with all React scripts dynamically inserted into it. So basically, every time anybody makes any request to any route, any GET request, basically this one file, small Node.js server, Express server, will just return index.html, and then all the routing based on the path a user is in is going to be handled through React browser side, not here server side. So server doesn't have to handle routing, know which route you're visiting. It doesn't care. It only sends index.html file, serves that to the user as a response, and then all the routing happens browser side for the user on the front end. And essentially that's pretty much it. It's the same flow for deploying APIs, for the front-end apps, for the React app and Next.js app.
A few moments later.
Hey guys, Lazar from the future here. So in the beginning of the video, I mentioned you can create these teams, and in the team you create a pipeline, and in that pipeline the apps for development, for production, and so on. One thing I completely forgot, or I basically haven't worked with the free version of the apps for a long time now, is in the themes. If you want to create apps within pipelines within the themes, they don't allow you there to use the free versions of the apps. So where they allow it is right here. So if you just click on Heroku logo, here is this personal account you have. So here you can create a pipeline, and then in that pipeline you can create an app in the staging column, for example, and then there you add environment variables, choose here, you can deploy by clicking this button here, deploy branch. So basically everything is the same, it's just in your personal theme, personal account, not in a specific theme, right? So if it's here, if I go to resources, it says that my dyno is active, so my server is active and it's for $0. So it's only here where they allow the free version, otherwise they won't. And now if I go to open app, it works. So if I go to the /URL, this is the JSON the server returns. So it works. So yeah, basically pretty much that's it. If you go to the logs, you can see that the server has started, Mongo has connected, listening on this port, and basically we have the live URL, which we can now use in our React app and Next.js app to connect to our online deployed API. Okay, that's pretty much it. Bye bye.